My husband stopped noticing me. No more compliments, no more conversations, just silence. Then one day, a coworker said, "You deserve to be seen." I didn't mean for it to happen, but it did. That night, my husband finally asked, "Why are you so distant?" I smiled sadly and said, "You didn't even notice when I left. I'm a 42-year-old woman from Sacramento, California. Been married for 17 years to my husband, we'll call him Mark, not his real name. We have 2 kids, 14M and 10F. I work full-time as a dental hygienist, and Mark works in IT. Pretty normal life on the outside. But I feel like I've been invisible in my own house for years. When we first got married, it was good. Not fairy tale perfect, but solid. We laughed, traveled, made a home. We struggled like everyone else, money, kids, work, but we were partners. He used to bring me coffee in bed. Text me for no reason. Grab my hand when we walked through Target. It started to shift around the 13-year mark. That's when I first noticed the distance. It didn't come all at once. It was small, slow changes. He stopped complimenting me. I would get a haircut, try new clothes, nothing. Not a word. Just a glance and back to his phone. He stopped asking me about my day. We'd sit down at dinner, and the only conversation was about the kids. And even that was short. Most of the time, he ate while scrolling on his phone. I'd talk, and he'd nod without really hearing me. He stopped touching me. No more kisses hello or goodbye. No more hugs from behind while I was cooking. Sex became maybe once every couple months, and even then, it felt robotic. No eye contact. Just habit. At first, I thought maybe he was depressed. I asked if he was okay. He always said he was just tired. So I tried harder. I planned date nights. He said he was too tired. I left cute notes in his car. He didn't mention them. I bought new lingerie. He said it's fine, you don't need to try that hard. I felt pathetic. Like I was throwing myself at someone who didn't even see me. It hit me one night. I made his favorite dinner, chicken piccata from scratch. I even bought wine, lit candles, made the table look nice. He came in, sat down, didn't say a word about it. Just pass the salt. I stared at him across the table, and I realized I was sitting with a stranger. I was married to someone who couldn't even look at me anymore. That night, after the kids went to bed, I cried in the bathroom with the fan on so he wouldn't hear. After that, I started pulling back. I stopped trying. I cooked, cleaned, took care of the kids. But I stopped talking to him unless I had to. It felt useless. Like talking to a wall. I work in a dental office, and we have a dentist there, Dr. Ray, not his real name. He's in his late 40s, newly divorced, quiet but respectful. Never flirty, never weird. Just kind. One afternoon, I came in with my hair curled and a new blouse. Not for anyone, just for myself. Ray passed me in the hallway and said, "Hey, you look nice today. Did something special happen?" I was so caught off guard I almost laughed. I just said, "No, just felt like dressing up." He smiled. "Well, it suits you." It was a tiny moment. But it felt like I had been starving and someone handed me a glass of water. That one sentence meant more than anything Mark had said in years. After that, I noticed Ray more. He wasn't overly personal, but he'd ask how I was doing. He noticed if I wore new earrings. He remembered my favorite tea and kept some in the office break room. Little things. I found myself lingering in conversations. Laughing more at work. Wearing lip gloss again. Nothing crazy. Just waking up. One Friday night, everyone else had left the office. I was finishing up paperwork, and so was Ray. It was raining outside. Hard. I didn't have an umbrella. He saw me at the door and said, "Wait, I'll walk you out." We shared his umbrella. We walked slow, quiet. The parking lot lights reflected in the puddles. I don't know what made him say it, but as we got to my car, he looked at me and said, "Can I ask you something?" I nodded. "Are you happy?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. Instead, I asked, "When was the last time someone saw you?" Like, really saw you? He stared at me. We were close. Too close. And then he kissed me. It wasn't passionate. It wasn't rushed. It was slow. Gentle. Careful. Like he was scared I'd run. I didn't. I let it happen. And then I drove home shaking, heart pounding, crying behind the wheel. I didn't sleep that night. I kept looking at Mark, asleep next to me. The same man I had loved, lived with, raised kids with. I didn't know who he was anymore. And I didn't know who I was either. I didn't kiss Ray again for a while. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. I felt alive. And disgusted with myself. And sad. All at the same time. Eventually, it happened again. Twice more. Always after work. Always followed by silence in the car, staring at the steering wheel like it could erase what I did. But the worst part wasn't the kiss. It was how much I pulled away from my own husband after it. I didn't want to be near him. His presence made me feel numb. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I just shut down. He didn't notice. He didn't ask where I was emotionally. He didn't ask why I was coming home late. He didn't ask why I slept with my back to him every night. Then one night, months after that first kiss, I was washing dishes. He was on the couch watching some video, laughing to himself. The kids were upstairs. I was exhausted. Not just physically, but in my soul. He looked over and said, "Hey, why are you so distant lately?" For a second, I just stood there. Water running. Hands in the sink. Then I turned around. I dried my hands. And I looked him in the eye. "Mark," I said. "You didn't even notice when I left." He blinked. "What?" "I left months ago. Not physically. But emotionally. Mentally." "You didn't even notice." He sat up a little. "What are you talking about?" "I kissed someone." His face changed. He didn't move. Just stared. "Who?" "I'm not going to answer that." Then I added, "It's over." Nothing happened beyond that. But I let someone see me because I couldn't take being invisible anymore. He said nothing. I turned around and went upstairs. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I felt empty. Like I had finally said the truth out loud, and there was nothing left to hide behind. That's where things stand now. I'll post more if people want to hear the rest. I don't know what comes next. But for the first time in a long time, I'm not lying to myself. And no, this isn't about just needing attention. It's about being forgotten in your own marriage and realizing one day, you disappeared, and no one even noticed. After I told Mark about the kiss, he didn't speak for the rest of the night. He slept on the couch. Or at least, he lay there. I could hear him shifting. No TV on. No phone. Just silence. The kind that fills a house and wraps around you like a vice. The next morning, he was gone before I woke up. No note. No text. I made coffee in the quiet. The kids asked where Dad was. I said he went out early. They didn't question it. That night, he came home. Late. His face looked tight. Pale. He didn't yell. Didn't explode. He walked into the kitchen and said, "I need to know who it was." I said nothing. "It was someone at your job," he said. "Wasn't it?" I looked at the floor. "It doesn't matter. It's over." He slammed his hand on the table. Not loud, but hard. Controlled. "I don't care if it's over. I care that my wife kissed another man and won't tell me who the hell it was." My voice shook. "You never asked what I needed. 4 years. And now suddenly you want details?" He stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. "Was it that dentist? Ray?" I blinked. He laughed, this bitter, quiet laugh. "Wow. Wow, okay. So him. The one you always said was just polite." I should have known. I whispered, "We didn't sleep together. That doesn't *****ing matter." He left again. This time slamming the door so hard the frame rattled. 2 days later, I got called into HR. Ray got transferred. Not fired. But quietly moved to a different location. Just like that. No explanation. But I knew. Mark had looked him up. He knew where I worked. I don't know how, but he must have called. Complained. Said something. He never admitted it, but the timing lined up too perfectly. HR didn't accuse me of anything. Just said there'd been a change in staff and some personal dynamics we want to avoid. Told me not to worry. That I hadn't done anything wrong. I went back to my station like nothing had happened. But the air felt heavier. Colder. Like everyone knew, even if they didn't. At home, Mark became someone else. He was trying. Suddenly. He brought me flowers. Randomly. He cooked dinner one night. Helped with laundry. Asked me how I was doing. I should have felt happy. But it felt like getting CPR after you've already drowned. Like someone finally screaming your name after they already walked past your body. I asked him, why now? He said, because I didn't realize I was losing you. I said, you lost me a long time ago. You just didn't notice. His face crumpled for a second. Like I punched him. But he didn't give up. He stayed present. Forced himself to stay. Asked about my day. Held my hand while we watched TV. Kissed my forehead in the morning. It was like watching a stranger pretend to be the husband I used to have. I didn't know how to respond. Some days I leaned in. Other days I pulled away. Then came the twist I wasn't ready for. I got a message on Facebook. From Ray. Just one sentence, I hope you're okay. I stared at it for a long time. My hands trembled. I hadn't spoken to him since the transfer. I didn't reply. But my heart? It cracked open again. Later that night, Mark asked if we could talk. He said he wanted to see a marriage counselor. He was serious. And he admitted something. He said, I knew things were bad. I just didn't think you'd ever leave. I thought you'd stay no matter what. Because you always did. That one sentence told me more than any apology ever could. He had counted on my silence. He thought my love would survive without water. A few days after that, my daughter handed me a picture she drew at school. It was of our family. 4 stick figures. She had drawn me without a face. Just a blank circle. I asked her, why didn't you draw my face? She shrugged. You're always quiet now. You don't smile. I locked myself in the bathroom and cried so hard I choked. That night, I looked at myself in the mirror for a long time. I didn't recognize my own eyes. I thought of Ray. I thought of Mark. I thought of the me that used to exist before all this. I didn't know who I wanted. Or if I wanted either of them. But I knew one thing, I was tired of disappearing. I didn't reply to Ray's message. Not that night. Not the next day. But I kept rereading it like it might suddenly say something else. Something more. Something that would help me make sense of where I stood. I didn't delete it either. A week passed. Things at home were weird. Mark was trying too hard. Like, too hard. He signed us up for a weekend couples retreat in Lake Tahoe. Booked it without asking. Said it would be good for us. He was suddenly full of words I'd begged to hear for years. But they didn't feel like they were for me. They felt like they were for him. For his guilt. His fear. Then one night, I was cleaning out the laundry room, sorting old bills and receipts. I found an old USB drive in a drawer. Just loose. No label. I plugged it into the desktop out of curiosity, thinking maybe it was tax stuff or old family photos. It wasn't. It was a folder. Labeled simply, private inside, screenshots. Emails. Texts. But not mine. His. Mark had been messaging someone. The messages were old, about 2 years old. A woman named Sabrina. I recognized the name. Someone he used to work with. I remember her vaguely from a company barbecue. She wore red lipstick and heels on the grass. I remember thinking she didn't look like the just a friend type. The texts weren't X-rated. Not exactly. But they were emotional. Deep. Personal. They talked late at night. He called her beautiful. Told her he wished he could see her smile more often. He told her he couldn't talk to me like he talked to her. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I confronted him that night. I walked into the living room. He was watching something dumb on TV, laughing to himself. I threw the USB on the table. Tell me who she is. He looked up. What? Sabrina. His face went white. He didn't deny it. He said, it wasn't what you think. I said, you told her she was the only thing keeping you sane. You said you felt alive with her. What exactly do I think this was? He said, we never met up. We never did anything physical. That doesn't make it better. He rubbed his face. It was 2 years ago. I stopped. I blocked her. I felt awful. You didn't feel awful enough to tell me. He was silent. Then I asked the question that burned through my chest. Is that why you stopped seeing me? Because you were already somewhere else? He opened his mouth. Closed it again. He didn't have an answer. Here's the twist no one prepares you for, I wasn't the only one who cheated. His was hidden, quiet, long over. Mine was brief, loud, and full of guilt. But both came from the same place, being unseen. Unheard. Unwanted. We were two ghosts passing each other in a house full of dishes and backpacks and calendars and dinner plans. And now we both knew it. 2 days later, Ray called. I hadn't even realized he still had my number. I let it go to voicemail. My heart raced listening to it. He said, "Hey. I know you didn't respond. I understand. I didn't want you to think I forgot about what you shared with me. Or that it didn't mean something. I'm not reaching out to cause problems. I just want you to know, you were seen." That was it. Simple. No pressure. No questions. Just that. I sat in the kitchen and cried quietly. Again. I didn't know what to do with that feeling. That someone still saw me. Even now. Even after everything. So here's the part one didn't see coming. Our daughter found the USB. A week later, I walked in on her crying in her room. She's only 10. I thought maybe something happened at school. But no. She had seen the file on the computer. She'd clicked it. She saw the name. The messages. Enough of them to piece together that her dad had said he loved someone who wasn't mommy. She looked at me and said, "Do you still love daddy?" I didn't know what to say. How do you explain years of neglect, of aching loneliness, of split-second mistakes and buried betrayal, to a 10-year-old who just wanted her family back? I just hugged her. And I lied. I'm trying. Everything came to a head on a Saturday. Sunny outside, birds chirping, the kind of morning where you'd think nothing could go wrong. Mark and I were supposed to go to our second marriage counseling session. The kids were with his sister for the weekend. I wasn't looking forward to it, but I thought it might help. Instead, it exploded. We were about to leave when I got a text. From Ray. I hadn't heard from him in over a week. Just wanted you to know I put in my resignation. Moving back to Oregon. Fresh start. Thank you for reminding me that people can still be kind. Mark saw the name flash on my lock screen. He didn't say anything right away. Just stared at me. Then said, "Seriously? You're still talking to him?" I said, "No." That was out of nowhere. "I haven't responded to anything." He said, "That doesn't matter. He felt comfortable texting you. That tells me everything." I lost it. You think that tells you everything? What about the USB? What about Sabrina? 2 years, Mark. You had a whole emotional affair while I was breaking myself trying to reach you. He snapped back, and you kissed another man in AF *****ing parking lot. And don't act like it was just a kiss. We were yelling now. Full volume. Curtains open. Windows open. I didn't care. You don't get to act like the victim when you emotionally checked out years ago. I screamed. I was dying in this house. Every day I woke up more invisible. And I was drowning, he shouted. Working all day, trying to keep us afloat, and then coming home to someone who looked at me like I was a stranger. We both gave up. We just didn't say it out loud. Then it happened. Our neighbor, Mr. Jenkins, a retired teacher in his 70s who walks his dog every morning, stood frozen on the sidewalk. He heard everything. He gave us a slow shake of his head and walked on. Mark saw him. I saw him. But we couldn't stop. It was like every word we'd swallowed for years came up in one violent, messy purge. Mark stormed out. Didn't say where he was going. I sat on the living room floor and just stared at the wall. I wasn't crying. I was empty. Like every argument, every truth, every failure had burned through my body and left ashes. He didn't come home that night. I slept on the couch. At some point I dreamed I was in our wedding dress, but no one was at the altar. Just me. Alone. The next morning, my son asked, "Did Dad leave?" I said, "He just needed space." He nodded. Then said something I'll never forget, "You both need to stop pretending we can't hear the fighting." That crushed me. Because he said it calmly. No anger. No emotion. Just fact. Our silence had taught our kids to go quiet too. Mark came back 3 days later. He looked wrecked. Beard untrimmed. Eyes red. We sat at the dining table. No yelling this time. Just silence. I want to be honest, he said. I nodded. I did love her. For a while. Not in the way I loved you. But I needed to feel like someone still cared. I looked down. I did too, I said. I know, he whispered. I just couldn't admit it. We both cried. Not like in the movies, no dramatic sobbing. Just quiet tears. Tired tears. We went back to counseling. We laid everything out. The betrayal. The neglect. The emotional affairs. The cold mornings. The things left unsaid. Our therapist, Donna, looked us in the eye and said, "You both got lost in the business of survival. And forgot to love each other. That happens. But now you need to ask yourselves, is there anything left worth rebuilding?" That question haunted me. Mark's sister found out everything. She was upset, not at me, but at him. She came to us so many times, she told him. Crying. Begging for help. And you always said she was just being dramatic. That's on you. He looked gutted. Even his mom called me and said, "I don't know what happened between you two. But I know you loved him." I saw it. And I'm sorry he didn't see it sooner. It's been 3 months. We're still in the same house. Still sleeping in the same bed. But there's a gap between us, even when we're touching. We talk more. We hug. We make dinner together. He tries to make me laugh again. And sometimes, I do. But I don't know if love can survive this kind of silence. This kind of truth. We haven't talked about divorce. But we haven't said the word forever in a long time either. Sometimes I think about Ray. Not in a what-if way. But in a thank you way. Thank you for reminding me I still existed. And Mark? I loved him. Still do. Maybe always will. But love needs air. And we suffocated it. Neglect is quiet. It creeps in slowly. You don't even know you're starving until someone else feeds you one kind word and your whole body remembers what it's like to feel full. I'm not the hero in this story. I'm not the villain either. I'm just someone who wanted to be seen. And now, I finally am. Even if it's just by myself.